The night my parents disowned me wasn't loud. No screaming, no dramatic exit. Just one sentence, said calmly, that erased 18 years in under 5 seconds. You're not our responsibility anymore. My mother said it first. My father nodded, like this was a business decision they'd already agreed on. I remember standing there, backpack half-zipped, heart pounding so hard I thought they could hear it. I kept waiting for someone to say, "Just kidding," or "We're angry, but you're still our child." Nothing came. That's how I learned something brutal very early in life. Silence can be louder than shouting. I was 18, barely legal, barely ready, barely breathing. The argument started over something small. It always does. College fees, expectations. Being realistic, my dad said I was wasting time. My mom said I was embarrassing the family. And then came the sentence that changed everything. If you walk out that door, don't come back. I thought they were bluffing. Parents always say things they don't mean, right? I picked up my bag anyway. Not because I was brave, because staying felt worse than leaving. I reached the door and turned around one last time. They didn't stop me. No tears, no hug, no be safe. Just 2 people standing there, arms crossed, watching me become a stranger. That was the moment I stopped being their child and became a problem they'd solved. The first night outside was colder than I expected. Not the weather, the feeling. I sat on a bus bench with my bag between my feet, phone at 2% battery, pretending I was fine. I told myself this was temporary, yet that someone would call, that they'd cool down. Nobody did. I slept sitting up, waking every hour, afraid someone would steal the one bag that held my entire life. That night taught me my first adult lesson. When people disown you, they don't miss you. They miss control. The next few weeks blurred together. I bounced between couches. Worked shifts nobody wanted. Learned how to stretch $1 until it begged for mercy. I stopped checking my phone for messages from home. Hope is expensive when you can't afford disappointment. I told people my parents lived far away. It was easier than explaining they lived close. They just didn't want me. And yeah, it broke me. I'd lie awake at night, replaying everything. What I could have said, what I should have apologized for, whether I was actually the problem. And that question eats at you when the people who raised you decide you're disposable. Thanksgiving came faster than I expected. For most people, it means family, food, warmth. For me, it meant survival math. I worked that day. Double shift, no turkey, no table, no seat. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. "We expect you to respect our decision and not show up." Not happy Thanksgiving. Not, "Are you okay?" Just boundaries. That hurt more than being kicked out, because it meant this wasn't anger anymore. It was policy. I didn't reply. What would I even say? What my parents didn't know was this. When you take everything from someone, you also take away their fear. I stopped trying to be what they wanted. Stopped chasing approval that came with conditions. I focused on one thing, survival, and survival has a way of sharpening you. I learned fast, failed faster, got back up because no one else was coming to save me. I didn't plan revenge. I didn't dream of proving them wrong. I just wanted a life where I wasn't begging to be allowed to exist. Years passed. No birthdays together. No holidays. No, we're proud of you. And then, out of nowhere, another message came. From my father this time. "We're hosting Thanksgiving. You're welcome to come if you can be respectful. Respectful. Like I was the one who broke the family, I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to scream, but another part, the part that had survived, knew something they didn't. I wasn't the same 18-year-old they threw out, and I wasn't coming back to beg. They thought Thanksgiving would be a quiet dinner. They had no idea that the child they disowned was walking back into their house with someone they never expected by my side. The hardest part about being disowned isn't being alone. It's realizing the people who taught you how to speak have decided they no longer want to hear your voice. The days after I left weren't dramatic. No sad music, no inspirational monologues, just survival. I learned very quickly that the world doesn't pause because your family walked away from you. Rent is still due. Food still costs money. And nobody cares why you're tired. I took whatever work I could find. Jobs where your name doesn't matter, only how fast you move. Morning shifts, night shifts, back-to-back days that blurred into weeks. I slept when I could. A couch 1 month, a cramped room the next. And every now and then, something small would hit me out of nowhere. A family laughing in a restaurant, and a dad teaching his kid how to ride a bike, a mom calling to ask if you ate. Those moments didn't make me cry. They made me angry. Not at them, at the fact that something so basic had been taken from me. I stopped telling people the truth. When coworkers asked about my family, I'd shrug and say, "They're busy." Busy pretending I didn't exist. Birthdays came and went, so did holidays. No cards, no calls, no messages that said we were wrong. At first, I kept hoping. Every unknown number made my heart jump. Every vibration felt like maybe this time. But hope is heavy when you carry it alone. Eventually, I put it down. I wasn't angry all the time. That's the part nobody tells you. Most days, I was just tired. Tired of being strong. Tired of explaining myself. Tired of proving I deserved space on this planet. There were nights I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall, asking myself one question over and over. Was I really that easy to give up on? That question messes with your head. It sneaks into your confidence. It whispers during interviews. It sits next to you when you make decisions. I had to learn how to quiet it. And I did that the only way I knew how, by building something that didn't depend on them. I started paying attention to things differently. How people with power spoke, how contracts worked, how systems were designed to reward people who understood the rules. At night, I learned. Not in classrooms, in silence. Cheap laptop, free resources, a notebook full of mistakes. I failed more times than I can count. Lost money I couldn't afford to lose. Trusted people I shouldn't have. Made decisions that set me back months. But here's what failure gave me that my family never did. Clarity. Every mistake taught me something useful. Every loss stripped away fear. Because once you've been thrown out of your own home, losing a deal doesn't scare you the same way. Years passed like this. Quiet. Relentless. Invisible. And my parents? They moved on. I heard things through relatives, how they told people I was figuring things out, how they avoided details. They didn't brag about me. They didn't check on me. They just erased me from the story. And weirdly enough, that hurt less than pretending. Then one year, around late fall, something changed. I was finally stable. Not rich, not flashy. Just solid. Bills paid. Food stocked. Sleep that didn't feel like a luxury. I was proud of that. And that's when the message came. From my father. Short, formal, carefully written. We're hosting Thanksgiving this year. You're welcome to come if you can keep things respectful. Respectful. As if I was the one who caused a scene. I stared at the message longer than I should have. Part of me laughed. Part of me wanted to delete it. But another part of me, the part that had survived all those silent years, understood something important. They weren't inviting me back because they missed me. They were inviting me back because time had passed, and pretending nothing happened felt easier than apologizing. I didn't reply right away. I sat with the decision. Going back meant reopening a chapter I worked hard to survive. Not going back meant letting them keep the narrative. And then something else crossed my mind. They still thought they knew who I was. They still thought I was that 18-year-old with a backpack and nowhere to go. They had no idea what those years of silence had turned me into. I finally replied, "I'll come." No explanation, no emotion, just facts. And the moment I sent that message, I felt it. Not fear, control. Because this time, I wasn't walking back into that house to beg. I was walking in with a truth they weren't ready for. They thought Thanksgiving would be a polite reunion. They had no idea that everything they believed about me was about to collapse the moment I walked through that door. Walking back into a house that once kicked you out does something strange to your body. Your feet move forward, but your chest tightens, like it's bracing for impact. As Thanksgiving Day got closer, I kept telling myself I was ready. I wasn't. That morning, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual, not fixing my hair, not checking my clothes, just looking. The face staring back at me didn't belong to the kid they threw out. The eyes were calmer, harder. Still, part of me wondered if walking back into that house was a mistake. But I'd already decided. This wasn't about healing old wounds. It was about closing a chapter, on my terms. Their house looked exactly the same. Same driveway, same porch light, same door I walked out of at 18 with a backpack and nowhere to go. And I paused before knocking. Not because I was scared, but because I needed to remember something important. I didn't owe anyone comfort. I knocked. My mother opened the door. For half a second, her face changed. Not joy, not relief, surprise. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You look, well," she said. I nodded. "You too." That was it. No hug, no apology. Just small talk pretending nothing happened. The living room was full. Relatives I hadn't seen in years. People who once whispered about me like I was a cautionary tale. They looked up when I walked in. Some smiled politely. Others looked confused. I could almost hear the unspoken question. Why is she here? Dinner prep filled the house with noise, plates clinking, oven timers, forced laughter. And my dad avoided eye contact. When he finally spoke to me, it was careful, like handling something fragile. "So, what are you doing these days?" he asked, loud enough for others to hear. There it was. The question wasn't curiosity. It was control. I answered calmly. Work. No details, no explanations. He nodded, unsatisfied. Around the table, conversations moved on without me. Politics, sports, people's kids. I ate quietly, listening. This was familiar territory, being present but invisible. And then someone brought it up. A cousin leaned forward and asked, half joking, "So, are you still figuring things out?" The table went quiet. Every fork paused. I felt it. That old pressure to justify my existence. I looked around, at faces waiting for a story they could categorize. A failure, struggle, redemption, maybe. I smiled lightly. "I'm doing fine." That answer annoyed them more than a confession ever could. My mother changed the subject quickly, but something had shifted. They could feel it. I wasn't defensive. I wasn't uncomfortable. I wasn't playing my old role, and that made them nervous. After dinner, people scattered into small groups. Coffee in the kitchen, football in the living room. My dad finally cornered me near the hallway. "You seem different," he said. I met his eyes. People change. He nodded slowly, like he didn't like that answer. "You should have stayed in touch," he added. Not an apology, an accusation. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. Because explaining would have meant pretending he didn't know exactly what he'd done. "I did what I had to," I said simply. He looked away. That's when the doorbell rang. Sharp, unexpected. The room froze for a second. My mom frowned. "Were you expecting someone?" My dad shook his head. The bell rang again. I stayed seated, calm, because I knew. My mother went to open the door. From where I sat, I couldn't see who was there, but I could hear the shift in the air. Her voice changed, confused, uncertain. "Yes?" she said. A man's voice replied, clear, professional. "Good evening. I'm here for her." The room went silent. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, and then I saw him, well-dressed, calm, carrying a leather folder like he belonged anywhere he stood, my lawyer. He smiled politely when he saw me. "Sorry I'm late," he said. Traffic." Every head in the room turned toward me. My dad's face drained of color. My mother stared like she was trying to piece together a puzzle with missing pieces. "Who is this?" my dad asked. I stood up, slowly. "This," I said, meeting his eyes, "is my lawyer." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush glass. They spent years pretending I didn't exist. Now they were staring at someone who clearly didn't come back alone, and they had no idea why my lawyer was standing in their living room or what he was about to say next. There's a moment when people realize they no longer control the story. It doesn't come with shouting. It doesn't need threats. It comes with silence and someone else speaking for you. That silence hit the room the second I said the words, "This is my lawyer." No one moved. My father blinked twice, like his brain was trying to catch up. My mother's mouth opened slightly, then closed again. Nobody asked him to sit, but he did anyway, calmly, confidently, like someone who knew exactly why he was there. My dad cleared his throat. "This is a family dinner," he said, forcing a laugh. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." My lawyer didn't argue. He simply placed the folder on the table. Leather, thick, heavy enough to make a sound when it touched the wood. "There hasn't been a misunderstanding," he said politely. "There's been a delay." That sentence alone changed the temperature of the room. People shifted in their chairs. Relatives who had been pretending to watch TV suddenly remembered important errands. No one wanted to be in the room anymore. But it was too late. My mother tried to smile. "We don't understand why legal matters are being discussed today," she said. My lawyer nodded. "I understand. This is uncomfortable." He looked at me. "Would you like me to explain, or would you prefer I do?" I didn't hesitate. "You can." That was the moment my parents stopped seeing me as their child and started seeing me as someone with leverage. He opened the folder slowly. Inside were documents, neatly organized, tabbed, highlighted. Not threats, and not accusations. Facts. "Years ago," my lawyer began, "when she was 18, she was asked to leave this home permanently." My dad's jaw tightened. "That's not how it happened," he snapped. My lawyer didn't react. According to witnesses and written messages, she was disowned and told not to return. Silence. My mom stared at the table. My lawyer continued, voice steady. "Since then, she has built her life independently. No financial support, no contact." My dad tried to interrupt again. "But that doesn't—" My lawyer raised one finger, not aggressively, firmly. "Please let me finish." That finger carried more authority than my parents ever had over me. The room felt smaller, walls closer, air heavier. He turned a page. "In the years following, certain assets and accounts connected to this family were transferred, adjusted, and—" He paused, choosing his words carefully, "handled in ways that assumed she would never return or contest anything." My mom's head snapped up. "What are you saying?" My lawyer met her eyes. "I'm saying that decisions were made under the assumption that she no longer existed as a legal family member." That sentence hit harder than anything else that night. Because disowning someone emotionally is one thing, erasing them legally is another. My dad stood up. "This is ridiculous," he said, voice raised. "We invited her here out of goodwill." My lawyer looked at him calmly. "You invited her because time passed," he said, "and you assumed silence meant agreement." My dad froze, because deep down, he knew it was true. My lawyer turned to me again. "There are options," he said. "Some of them involve conversations. Some involve courtrooms." That word changed everything. Courtroom. Not yelling, not drama. Consequences. My mom's voice cracked. "We never meant to hurt you." I almost laughed. Almost. But instead, I said nothing. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't need to explain how much pain they caused. It was already documented. My lawyer closed the folder, not with a slam, with control. "We're not here to ruin a holiday," he said. "We're here to clarify boundaries." Boundaries? A word my parents loved when they were setting them for me. They didn't like it so much when it came back around. My dad sat down slowly. His shoulders looked smaller, older, and he didn't look angry anymore. He looked scared. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. Every eye in the room turned to me. This was the moment they expected revenge. Yelling, demanding, a list of grievances. I didn't give them any of that. "I want what I was denied," I said calmly. "Respect and acknowledgement." My lawyer nodded. "And clarity going forward," he added. No one spoke for a long time. The clock ticked loudly on the wall, every second stretching. Finally, my mom whispered, "We didn't think you'd come back like this." I met her eyes. "I didn't come back," I said. I moved forward. That sentence ended the discussion. My lawyer stood up. "We'll be in touch," he said politely. "Enjoy the rest of your evening." He looked at me. "Ready?" I nodded, and as we walked toward the door, no one tried to stop us. No one argued. No one followed. They were still processing the moment their authority evaporated. They thought Thanksgiving would end with leftovers and small talk. Instead, it ended with something far more terrifying for them. The realization that the child they disowned now had a voice, and it wasn't speaking alone. Winning doesn't always look like celebration. Sometimes it looks like walking away without needing to look back. As the front door closed behind us, I didn't feel relief the way I thought I would. I felt light. Not because I'd scared them, not because I'd cornered them, but because for the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying their judgment with me anymore. Outside, the night air felt cold and clean. My lawyer walked beside me in silence for a moment. Then he asked, gently, "You okay?" I nodded, and I meant it. We stood there for a second, the house glowing behind us. The same house that once decided I was no longer worth keeping. It didn't feel powerful anymore. It felt small. On the drive home, memories came in waves. The bus bench, the backpack. The nights I fell asleep hungry, at convincing myself this was temporary. I remembered how hard I worked just to feel stable. How many times I doubted myself. How often I wondered if maybe they were right. And I realized something important. They didn't break me when they disowned me. They trained me. They taught me what abandonment feels like, so I'd never abandon myself again. In the weeks that followed, things settled quietly. No dramatic court cases, no shouting matches, just conversations handled through professionals, boundaries drawn clearly, respect finally enforced. Not because they suddenly understood my pain, but because they finally understood my position. That difference mattered. One evening, my phone buzzed, a message from my mother. "I hope one day you can forgive us." I stared at it for a long time. And forgiveness is a strange word. People use it like it's a shortcut to peace. But forgiveness without accountability is just another form of silence. I typed slowly. "I'm at peace. That's enough for me." I didn't send anger. I didn't send love. I sent truth. I never went back to that house. Not because I was banned, but because I didn't need to. I built something else. A life where no one had to approve of my existence. A life where family was defined by behavior, not blood. Some nights, I still think about that 18-year-old version of me. Standing at the door, backpack in hand, heart breaking quietly. I wish I could tell her something. Not that everything would be okay, but that she wouldn't stay broken. People sometimes ask me if I regret going back that Thanksgiving, and I don't, because closure doesn't come from apologies. It comes from standing in the same place that once defeated you and realizing it no longer has power over you. That's what that night gave me. Not revenge, not validation. Freedom, here's the truth most people don't talk about. Being disowned doesn't end when you leave the house. It follows you. In how you love, in how you trust, in how you prepare for loss before it happens. But healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing yourself even when it's uncomfortable. even when it's lonely, even when no one is clapping. I don't tell this story to make my parents look bad. I tell it because there are people watching this who are quietly surviving the same thing. People who were told they weren't enough. People who were abandoned before they were ready. People who think silence means weakness. It doesn't. Silence, when chosen, is power. If there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's this. You don't owe anyone proof of your worth. The people who disown you don't get to decide how your story ends. And sometimes, the strongest verdict you can deliver is simply living well, without asking permission. They disowned me at 18 thinking they were closing a chapter. What they didn't realize was that they were only removing themselves from the rest of my story. And that was their final mistake.